What are your plans for the off season and possibly playing or just doing individual workouts?
Yeah, I mean, probably take a little bit of a break here, just for maybe a week. I don't really want to lose kind of the stuff I've worked on, and just trying to get my body back to full health.
What happens when the savior of a sport decides she no longer wants to be sacrificed on national television? For months, fans watched in absolute awe as the most electrifying player in modern basketball history dragged an entire league out of complete obscurity, shattered decades-old attendance records, and made network executives billions of dollars, all while enduring a level of relentless hostility that would break even the most seasoned veteran. Everyone from casual viewers to die-hard analysts expected the rookie phenom to just smile for the cameras, shoot her unbelievable logo threes, and take the brutal physical beatings in stride, gracefully accepting the harsh, unspoken realities of professional basketball. They thought she would quietly shoulder the massive burden of a deeply flawed franchise and a league establishment that seemed to actively resent her very existence, on acting like a perfectly obedient soldier, while the veterans took their thinly veiled shots at her in the press and on the hardwood. The mainstream narrative pushed by sports networks was that everything was perfectly fine, that the dangerously physical play was just a traditional rite of passage, and that she was happily adjusting to her new life in the pros with a smile on her face. But that manufactured fairy tale wasn't the whole story. And what was actually happening behind closed doors would shock everyone. The target on her back was painted the exact moment she stepped off the stage at the draft, glowing with the unprecedented promise of transforming a financially struggling sport forever. Instead of a welcoming committee grateful for the massive influx of cash and attention, she was met with a terrifying gauntlet of resentment, petty rivalries, and downright dangerous play that made every single game look significantly more like a combat sport than a professional basketball match. Opponents weren't just trying to play tough, hard-nosed defense. They were sending violent personal messages, deliberately throwing heavy shoulders, hip-checking her aggressively to the hardwood, and delivering cheap shots while the referees miraculously swallowed their whistles time and time again. It was an absolute shot show of officiating, with blatant, flagrant fouls routinely being downgraded and intentional aggression being completely brushed off by commentators as simple, veteran initiation. Players who had spent their entire careers toiling away in half-empty, quiet arenas were suddenly playing in front of completely sold-out, screaming crowds. And instead of thanking the rookie who single-handedly made that incredible phenomenon happen, they decided to take out their deep-seated frustrations directly on her ribs. And you could see the sheer, undeniable exhaustion in her eyes as she peeled herself off the floor night after night, constantly looking around for a loyal teammate to step up and defend her honor, only to find nothing but empty space and silence. The league itself was perfectly happy to plaster her face on absolutely every billboard, promotional package, and social media post to drive engagement. But when it came to actually protecting their biggest financial asset from bodily harm, they deliberately looked the other way. And this deafening silence from the very people who were supposed to have her back set the stage for a massive, unprecedented internal collapse that no one in the media saw coming. The Indiana Fever front office somehow managed to completely fumble the greatest gift a sports franchise could ever possibly receive, operating with a staggering level of incompetence that left fans and analysts utterly baffled. When an organization drafts a once-in-a-generation player who instantly makes them the most watched, most talked-about team in the entire league, basic common sense dictates that management must immediately build a protective fortress around her, bringing in seasoned, tough enforcers, and creating an offensive system perfectly tailored to her transcendent playmaking abilities. Instead of doing the obvious, the Fever mercilessly threw her to the wolves with a haphazardly constructed, fundamentally flawed roster and a coaching staff that seemed deeply opposed to letting her play the fast-paced, high-scoring style of basketball that made her a global icon in the first place. Press conferences quickly devolved into a bizarre masterclass in passive aggression, with the head coach routinely throwing her superstar rookie under the bus, sharply criticizing her shot selection in front of hungry reporters, and demanding she conform to a significantly slower, outdated, traditional game plan that completely neutralized her on-court magic. It was absolutely maddening for millions of viewers to watch a generational talent being forcibly shoved into a mediocre, unimaginative system, essentially taking a high-performance sports car engine and dropping it into a rusty, broken-down pickup truck, while complaining that it wasn't towing the line properly. There was absolutely no designated protector on the floor, no fierce veteran willing to get right in the face of an opposing player who just delivered a dirty hit, leaving the young rookie completely isolated to fight her own brutal battles both physically and mentally. This shocking lack of institutional support wasn't just simple negligence. It bordered on deliberate professional sabotage, turning the locker room and the court into an incredibly toxic environment that was rapidly wearing down her love for the game. But if the local situation in Indiana was a total disaster, the blatant disrespect on a national and international scale was about to get exponentially worse. When the highly anticipated Olympic roster for Team USA was finally announced, the entire sports world let out a collective gasp of utter disbelief as the most famous, highly viewed female athlete on the entire planet was inexplicably left off the prestigious list. The official excuses peddled by the selection committee ranged from a supposed lack of senior national team experience to vague, unprovable chemistry concerns. But anyone with half a brain paying attention knew exactly what was really going on behind the scenes. It was a calculated, deliberate, and highly political freezing out by a notoriously cliquey establishment that simply did not want to share the massive international spotlight with a young player who supposedly hadn't waited her turn in their archaic, unwritten hierarchy. Coaches and committee members hit the media circuit aggressively, trying desperately to justify the wildly unpopular decision to a furious public. But the optics were a complete and total disaster, and exposing a deep-seated jealousy and pettiness that transcended mere basketball strategy. For the rookie superstar, this highly publicized, globally discussed snub served as a massive, brutal wake-up call, permanently stripping away any lingering, naive illusions she might have had about fairness, pure meritocracy, or genuine loyalty within the women's basketball establishment. She handled the massive rejection with her usual, heavily praised public grace, politely refusing to give the desperate media the dramatic, angry soundbite they were fishing for, but privately, the underlying message was received loud and clear. If she could shatter every single viewing record in television history, single-handedly secure chartered flights for the entire league so players wouldn't have to fly commercial, and effectively negotiate a massive new television rights deal without earning even a single ounce of actual respect from the old guard. Then playing their petty political games was a complete waste of her time. And this profound realization fundamentally shifted how she viewed her entire professional future, leading to an entirely new, ruthless business mindset. The financial reality of the entire situation only added explosive fuel to a fire that was rapidly burning completely out of control, vividly highlighting the sheer, undeniable absurdity of the power dynamics currently at play. The WNBA was paying her a heavily restricted rookie salary that amounted to absolute pocket change in the broader sports world, a figure so laughably low that it literally became a running joke on national late-night television networks and major sports talk shows. Meanwhile, her independent, heavily negotiated endorsement deals with global mega brands like Nike and Gatorade were bringing in tens of millions of dollars, making her entirely, incredibly financially independent from the very league that was simultaneously exploiting her likeness and allowing her to be physically mistreated. She wasn't a typical desperate rookie who needed a bi-weekly paycheck just to survive. She was a walking, talking corporate conglomerate who was essentially, single-handedly subsidizing the very people who were actively trying to tear her down and minimize her accomplishments. How every single time an aggressive opponent delivered an uncalled cheap shot, or a bitter veteran went on a popular podcast to deliberately minimize her massive impact on the game, they were doing it on a massive, highly visible stage that she had personally bought and paid for with her own unprecedented star power. The traditional leverage a professional sports league typically holds over its vulnerable players simply did not exist in this unique scenario. Not because she absolutely didn't need the WNBA to remain a massive cultural phenomenon, but the WNBA desperately, undeniably needed her to keep their arena lights on and their television ratings from plummeting back to zero. This immense, unprecedented financial disparity created an unspoken, heavy tension, a massive elephant in the room that team executives and league officials were absolutely terrified to publicly acknowledge. But heavily funded alternative options were quietly and aggressively brewing in the background, and they were about to offer her an incredibly lucrative escape route that no one in the traditional establishment saw coming. With the rapid rise of incredibly lucrative alternative leagues and massive, untapped overseas markets, the underlying threat of her simply walking away permanently transitioned from an idle, speculative fan fantasy into a very real, terrifying possibility for the entire establishment. New, highly publicized 3-on-3 leagues were actively securing massive private funding, offering top-tier players absolutely astronomical, fully guaranteed contracts for a mere fraction of the grueling traditional schedule, complete with massive equity stakes and a level of true player empowerment that the WNBA could never realistically match. Intense whispers began circulating through league circles that rival organizations were actively preparing absolutely unprecedented, a record-breaking offers tailored specifically for her, massive deals strategically designed to pull the absolute biggest draw in sports away from the exhausting 5-on-5 grind and into a highly controlled environment that actually valued her true worth. Furthermore, top-tier European clubs, heavily backed by ambitious billionaires who fully understand the massive global marketing power of her personal brand, were allegedly preparing to roll out the red carpet, offering her the exact kind of royal treatment, personal security, and massive financial compensation that made the Indiana Fever's entire setup look like a high school amateur hour. Why on earth would a multimillionaire global icon voluntarily continue to subject her battered body to completely unpunished assaults and subject her mental health to highly toxic media narratives for a genuinely paltry rookie salary when the entire world was practically begging to pay her what she was actually worth? The foundational leverage had completely, permanently shifted, and the agonizing days of her quietly, politely accepting the blatant mistreatment were officially over, to setting the perfect stage for a massive confrontation that would shake the entire franchise to its very core. This wasn't just about the massive money anymore. It was about demanding basic respect, ensuring long-term self-preservation, and finally taking total, unapologetic control of her own unprecedented destiny. The boiling point finally arrived behind closed doors, in the form of a brutal, completely uncompromising ultimatum delivered straight to the panicked Indiana Fever front office. essentially drawing a massive permanent line in the sand that could not be ignored. Intense rumors began to leak to highly connected insiders that she had unequivocally, forcefully communicated that the current toxic situation was completely unsustainable. And if drastic, immediate changes weren't made to the heavily criticized coaching staff, the severely lacking roster, and the overarching passive culture of the organization, she was fully prepared to walk away forever. She didn't even have to formally, officially demand a trade through traditional channels. The sheer, terrifying threat of her simply refusing to suit up, citing completely valid mental health preservation or physical safety concerns, was more than enough to send absolute, unadulterated panic through the highest, most powerful levels of the organization and the league office. This wasn't a polite negotiation, and it certainly wasn't a gentle request from a subservient, easily controlled employee. And it was the absolute most powerful figure in the entire sport, looking her terrified employers dead in the eye and forcefully telling them to fix the DMN mess they had completely created, or painfully watch their recently revitalized franchise crumble right back into total, meaningless obscurity. The underlying message was crystal clear and completely devastating. Fire the incompetent people who are actively holding this team back. Immediately sign tough, loyal players who will actually physically protect me on the court, and force the league office to start calling the blatant, flagrant fouls. Or I will take my massive brand, my millions of dedicated fans, and my generational talent to a global platform that actually genuinely appreciates it. It was a completely ruthless, strategically brilliant power play that instantly stripped away all the polite, the carefully crafted PR spin and forced the deeply stubborn Indiana Fever to make a genuinely terrifying choice between keeping their foolish pride and protecting their entire financial future. And the massive, industry-shaking fallout from this highly secretive, behind-the-scenes explosion was about to permanently change the entire landscape of professional women's sports forever. Ultimately, this entire chaotic, unprecedented saga exposes the glaring, deeply uncomfortable truth about a professional sports league that simply wasn't prepared for the massive superstar it so desperately prayed for over the last 2 decades. Caitlin Clark didn't just expose the glaring tactical flaws and gross incompetence of the Indiana Fever organization, she completely ripped the friendly mask off the entire women's basketball establishment, vividly highlighting the deep-seated pettiness, the completely archaic business models, and the sheer, stubborn reluctance to embrace necessary evolution. By bravely drawing a firm line in the sand and directly threatening to leave the suffocating toxicity behind, she effectively rewrote the entire rulebook on modern player empowerment, definitively proving that true, undeniable power doesn't reside in the commissioner's plush office, but directly in the hands of the generational athlete who literally controls the remote control of millions of dedicated viewers. Whether she ultimately decides to stay in Indiana and forcefully mandate the necessary, sweeping changes, or genuinely packs her bags to completely revolutionize an eager alternative league, she has already undeniably won the ultimate high-stakes war of leverage. She effectively forced a deeply complacent, arrogant system to look in the mirror and finally realize that true loyalty is strictly a two-way street. And you absolutely cannot repeatedly bite the massive hand that feeds you without eventually starving to death. As the heavy dust finally begins to settle on the absolute most chaotic, highly discussed rookie season in modern sports history, one lingering, deeply haunting question remains for the terrified executives desperately trying to salvage the fragile situation. If you genuinely couldn't handle the massive responsibility of properly nurturing a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon, do you really, truly deserve to keep her at all?